starting with the upcoming CSS features talk. Just a second, let me share my screen. Okay. Cool. So by the title upcoming CSS features, these CSS features are already present in some of the browsers. I would say mostly in almost 80% of the browsers. Remaining 20% of the browsers are still not supporting it. So word of caution before using this in the production. So we'll move on to the first feature that we're going to discuss. It's container queries. So container queries, before going into container queries, let's understand what is response.
Speak a little louder. Speak a little loudly. It's clear, but your voice needs to be a little louder.
Okay. Bit tough, man, but I'll try.
Yeah, this is much better.
Okay. So responsive web design. We'll understand about what is responsive web design. Here, if you see, there are two images. So the first image, if you see, there is a application which ideally loads perfectly in all the screen sizes, be it laptop, desktop, mobile phones, iPad, etc., etc. But in the next image, where we are able to see, we have a site which gets rendered in the mobile, but its layout is totally broken. The text is truncated, and the site is totally not usable. So whenever we are designing a particular website, we will have to ensure that we change the style based upon the screen it renders. So how is this possible? This is possible via responsive web design. Mostly it's specifically called as media query. So with media query, we can change the style based upon the screen size. But then why container queries? Okay, that would be the next question. So moving on, we'll understand the limitation of the media query. Media queries are actually queries the screen size. For example, if the max width or min width, whatever query that takes place, it takes place corresponding to the width of the screen. But if you see in this image, right, there is a subscribe widget which is present in the left panel, and the same subscribe widget is present in the main panel. So in the left panel, if you see, the width of the container is less, and in the main panel, the width of the container is more. So based upon the container width, we need to change the styles. So how do we do it? That is where container queries come in. So you guys might also think about if container query is present, then why to use media query? So yeah, media query and container query work together. So if you see in this image, we are able to see the media query is used for the page level styles. Any style which needs to be changed based upon the screen or page level, we still use media query. For container query, specifically used for the components. So these components, which are present inside a container, will use the container query to change its style based upon the container size. Moving on. So we would already know that we have certain units. We might, there's already viewport height and viewport width units. Along with that, the container query, we are having new units associated with it. So one is container query width. So if we give 100 CQW, it will take the entire width of the container query, and CQH, container query height. If we give 100 CQH, it will take the entire height of the container. Then we have CQI, container query inline. It's similar to CQW. It changes only when the direction of the text changes. Similarly, we have CQB, container query block. It refers to the CQH, container query height. As long as the direction is the same, it's same like CQH. And then we have CQ min and CQ max. CQ min compares whatever is lesser, CQI or CQB, and then it returns it. Similarly, CQ max, it compares the largest value and returns it. Cool. Now we'll have a quick demo. So demo in the sense in the screenshot, we will just walk through how it is done. So as we described, we have this widget, subscribe widget, one widget in the left panel and one widget in the right panel. Before making a container queryable, we'll have to make it container type. So for example, in the parent container, we have to mention its style as container type inline size. Only when we give the statement, we can query the container for its width. So that would be the first statement. And here we are maintaining as inline size. The other value that we can pass here is size. So if we do inline size, we can query the width. And if we give size, we can query the width as well as the height. So this is the parent container style that is required, post which we have a specific container style for max with 400 pixel, which means any style that has to be applied for smaller size, we can have it over here. And then we have min with 500 pixel. So any style for medium size, we can put it over here. For example, here, if you see, the width is lesser and all the elements are at column. So it is like flex direction column. All the elements are stacked one below the another. But here, since the width is more, the text input as well as the button, they are in one row. So flex direction is row. So this is how we can change the styles based upon the container. So this is the code snippet. So we have flex direction column for max with 400 for smaller style, and for min with 500 pixel, we have flex direction row. So the parent container part, orange color background. Okay. So this is basically the first line is parent container. So it refers to the parent. For example, if this subscribe widget is present inside a nav panel, then we just write nav and then container type inline size. So this establishes a container for querying its size. So if you want to write a container max with 400 pixel, then the parent element should be declared as container type. Only post that we will be able to write container queries inside the common reusable components. This is just the media query on how we can hook into the width of the container. Container max size 400 pixel, container min width 500 pixel. Moving on, we are having a browser support. This is basically Can I Use. Can I Use is a website where we can check what is the current support for a particular CSS or JavaScript feature, any feature. So if you see, it supports all major browsers except for mobile-based browsers like Opera Mini, Android browsers, Firefox, or QQ browsers and iOS. Specific browsers related to mobile, they are not yet supported, but other things, Chrome, Edge, Safari, Firefox, Opera, they all support the container queries. Next, we move on to the hash selector. So before going into hash selector, we would understand what is selector. So selector is for finding which HTML we can apply style for. For example, here we have selector and we have the specific property value. Property can be background or color, whatever it is. There are mostly 5 types of selectors. Simple selectors are basically the ID and class that we associate. And then we have relationship selectors, which is basically the sibling selectors like plus, tilde, those things. And then we have the pseudo class selectors. Pseudo class selectors are generally specific like over, checked. These will be pseudo class selectors, which represent the state of the element. And then we have the pseudo element selectors. Before, after, these are the pseudo elements that are present in the DOM. We can style it using pseudo element selectors. And then we have attribute selectors. So attribute selectors, we can have any element and style it based upon the attribute. So attribute, for example, for anchor tag, href is an attribute. So we can style based upon what is there in the href attribute as well. So this is what CSS selectors are. Next, we go on to why hash selector. We'll understand what is the requirement that made us build this hash selector. So this is, I think most of you people would have already seen the Stack Overflow post. Me, myself, as a UI dev, have visited this page multiple times. Is there a CSS parent selector? So the use case is they want to style a li element based upon a anchor tag, which has an active class. So this was asked, like 14 years ago, and we've got the solution just now. So we are moving to the hash selector here. Selector, we are able to style based upon the invalid input. So, okay. So if you see here, we have a form component, and inside form component, we have 2 inputs and a button. So whenever we are having an invalid input inside the invalid input, then there is a red border, dotted border in the form. So how do we do it? We just do it with one CSS line snippet. We have form, and then we have hash, the hash selector, and then we have input on focus. If it is invalid, invalid is again another pseudo state. Then we apply the style to the form element. So based upon the child element input, we are able to style the form element. That is the one of the most awaited features in the CSS. Otherwise, we used to use JavaScript for this feature. Now we are able to achieve it just within CSS. Same, so we are checking the browser support here now. So apart from Firefox, all the major desktop browsers supported, and mobile browsers are still lagging, but soon in some months or years, maybe they'll be supported to a wide extent. Moving to the next feature, which is color mix. Before understanding color mix, let's get an understanding about color spaces. So mostly we have heard about RGB, HSL, LCH. So these are color spaces. Color spaces are nothing but it's a specific organization of colors that helps us to reproduce the color in different mediums, digital and physical mediums. And when we use different color spaces, the output differs. For example, in sRGB color space, we mix blue and white. It will lead to this color. The same color, if we mix in different spaces, we're able to see different colors rendered. Now we are going to the actual property color mix. And before going into color mix, we'll understand why color mix. So generally for a color palette is nothing but the color that we are using in the application. In that particular thing, we have already the primary colors defined. But secondary or tertiary colors, we define it based upon the primary colors. Earlier, for deriving this primary, the tertiary colors from primary colors, we have methods like darken, saturate, complement, invert, etc., etc. So what it does is like from the primary color, we're able to derive the tertiary color. But with color mix, we can do this natively in CSS, and there is no need of any color function from any preprocessors like SAS and this. So here there is a demo. So in this demo, we can, I'll just walk through the code snippet. So we have the HTML. In the HTML, we have certain color variables. So we have one primary color called brand, and the brand, we have a particular color. And here we have a color mix. So in color mix, there are actually 1, 2, 3 properties here. But actually it can, yeah. So first property is the color space. So as we mentioned, right, there are multiple color space like RGB, SGB, HSL, LCH. So we can mention what color space we want the output to be. And then we mention the exact color that we want. For example, here we are passing the brand color. And then we are mixing it with 25% of black, which means we are having 75% of the brand color and 25% of the black color. And similarly, surface 2, we are mixing 50% of the brand color and 50% of the black color. And for surface 3, we are having 25% of the brand color and black is 75%. So if we get renders like this, so dark 25, this is the tertiary colors or secondary colors, which we are able to derive from the primary colors. Dark 25, 50, 75. So this is how we use color palette, which helps us to maintain our color mix, which we helps us to use the color palette more efficiently. Next, we have the browser support. Compared to other features, the browser support is lesser for this, but mostly all desktop browsers support it. Only specific mobile browser, they have partial support for it. Yeah. So that's it, folks. Any questions? Okay, good one.
Thank you, Ramanathan. I think it was crisp and clear. So now it's time for break.
Ekta, 1 second. There is a question over here. I know we all want a break. Just one question. We'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, sure.
Hi, Ram. So the question is like regarding container queries.
Yeah.
So you said like the container queries is not yet supported in all the browsers, right? So, but for me, I want to use container queries. So is there a way should we polyfill it? Or like if I want to use it in production applications, should I polyfill it? So What's your take on it?
Yeah.
Because we have customers who use very old browsers.
True.
So like they use Chrome 75 or like Safari 12.
True.
Because they can't upgrade their laptops, so
Yes.
they don't get the newer browsers. So
correct.
yeah.
So so basically we have something called as add supports. So when we have the add support, we can specify whether a feature is supported. Like it can be add supports work with anything for color mix, or it can be for container queries, etc. And we don't use polyfill. We use responsive web design only. So we have the media query itself. Media query itself, we can add a special class to that particular container, which has lesser width. And then based upon that, we might have to change the style accordingly. So there's no specific polyfill kind of a library that is available for it. But within responsive web design itself, we can achieve it. But we need to add some additional classes for it.
Thank you, Ram.
Yeah.
There's a question from Pune as well. Maybe a quick one.
Yeah.
Speak a little loudly.
Okay, so when it comes to colors, we have like different formats, the export, the SSL, and the WP. But how is one advantage is like over here? For example, I'm building a design system, and in that I saw that HSL actually makes the color wheel more accessible, kind of shows like what exact colors you're using. But there's also this thing called HW, which is coming and which will be like I think most of the browsers support it. But is using HSL or HWB over export is more advantageous over the longer run?
Okay.
The longer run.
So if I'm getting the question right, it's more about which color space to use, correct? HSL or RGB, is it right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So it depends upon the color that we are using. For example, RGB have limited, there is something called as color gamut. What color gamut defines is the range of colors that we can, show in the web based upon the color gamut we choose. If we have color gamut, which is not supported by RGB, then definitely you can go ahead for HSL and other color spaces. But the catch is there should be some, so it's supported only in newer versions of CSS, right? So it's a trade-off. If all your users are using the latest browsers, then we can go ahead and use the latest new color spaces. In the meantime, if we don't have it, then we'll have to stick to the existing RGB color space. So two things, what are the colors that you're going to support? Is the color very, latest one that is not supported in RGB. And next one is basically the users. Are they using the latest browsers? Will they be able to render the code when this particular application goes production? Does that answer your question?
Yes.